Well, it's 9/11, and it's hard to believe that it's been 22 years since that day. In some ways, it feels like an entire lifetime ago, and in some ways, it feels like it happened just yesterday. But I know that everybody has their story of where they were on 9/11, and this is mine. Um, I was 21 years old. My son was 9 months old. My oldest son was 9 months old. And I was working in a furniture factory. And I was a material handler, so I was going to get some materials to work with. I was pushing my cart down the aisle. And all of a sudden, this guy comes running at me, past me, screaming, "They bombed us, they bombed us." And I went, "Who bombed us?" And I won't repeat what he said back to me. But I was confused and just trying to make sense of it. A couple of minutes later, my supervisor comes up and starts explaining to us that planes had hit the World Trade Center and that one had hit the Pentagon. At this point, they were still tracking the one in Pennsylvania that eventually would go down to Pennsylvania. And I just remember sitting there trying to wrap my head around it, trying to understand what it was that I was hearing. And our supervisor told us that if we wanted to go home, we could, or if we wanted to go to the break room and watch it on the TV, that we could. And I decided to just keep working. My line continued to keep working, and so I decided to do so too. On my lunch break and on my afternoon break, I went out and listened on the radio in my car to what was going on and was just trying to make sense of the whole thing. And then when I came home, my wife at the time, she had cooked supper, and she said, "Are you ready to watch this?" And I said, "No, I'm going to go take a shower first, and I'm going to eat first, and then we'll watch it, or I'll watch it." She'd been watching it all day. And she had the local minister and his dad, who was still alive back then. He was on the radio talking, and two guys I'd known my whole life was talking about it and praying about it and all that stuff. And so I go take my shower, I eat, and then I sit down in front of the TV to watch it. And when it's over, my wife looks at me and says, "So what'd you think about it?" And I said, "Well, it just feels like we're in a movie. It feels like this isn't even real. It feels like it just feels like we're all in a dream." And I wasn't a fan of George W. Bush. I didn't vote for him. Um, like I said before, my family has always talked politics as long as I can remember. The subjects always came up, and so I wasn't a fan of him or his dad. But I remember in the days after that, respecting him for the fact that he at least tried to bring us together. And he would lose me soon after that. He would lose me really bad. But there for a few days after it was over, it just felt like we were all together. It felt like we were all on the same page, and all the labels seemed to go out the window. It was like nobody was a Democrat or Republican anymore. Nobody was a atheist or a Christian anymore. Nobody cared whose team won the Super Bowl. It was just like there for just a brief minute we were all together. And I feel like that's the last time that we were. So whenever 9/11 rolls around, I always think of that. And I go back to that moment in time and I say, what went wrong after that? You know, where did we go and how did we get so far off track? I can remember talking politics and debating politics with my uncles growing up, and I can remember, debating Bush versus Gore. And I remember the tone between uncles that disagree with one another. And it's not the same as it is today at all. They would talk about it. They would disagree. They might argue a little bit, might get a little heated, but you didn't hear all these nicknames and words that people have nowadays to throw at each other. And you didn't hear all these just worn out cliches and talking points that everyone just loves to throw at each other. So I look back at that time and I say that was like the last time that anything made any sense. Like, to me, everything that happened after 9/11, on 9/11 and forward, has not made sense to me. The world doesn't make sense. And I was telling that to my mom one day, and she said that she felt the same way when Kennedy was assassinated, that was her moment in time where her childhood pretty much ended, and it was like, okay, the world's a different place than what I thought it was. And I remember sitting there that day watching that, and as I'm watching it on TV, I've kind of got the volume down just a little bit, and I'm listening to the preacher at the same time. I'm trying to kind of focus on both, and as I watched the buildings come down, I just remember thinking, looking over at my 9-month-old son, thinking he's never going to live in the America that I've lived in for the last 20 years. He's never going to know it the way that I can say I knew it for only 20 years. He's never going to be here. And so it's a day that I always think back on and remember, and I know we all do. And I know a whole lot of people will want to jump in the comment sections and argue with me today, and all I can say to you is go for it. But I won't be coming back on you today, because I'm just remembering those times when that one last time that we all were together. And I'm not going to say that I wish we could get back to that, because I don't believe in going backwards, and I don't believe in the whole simpler times argument. What I would say is I wish that we could learn from that, and I wish we could learn from everything that happened afterwards, and I wish that we could do better. That would be my hope.